I think, as you've probably heard, Nielsen, we've recently announced our total audience strategy for measurement. And this is something which we announced earlier this year, which is all about kind of changing the philosophy Nielsen's taking towards cross-screen measurement so that we can measure everything, content and advertising, across every screen, regardless of how it's distributed. And what we're doing this year is we're building a series of new products to make sure we can check all those boxes, fill in all of the holes that we have in our measurement, and give this kind of complete total audience view of advertising and content.
So give us an idea of a little bit deep in the weeds for some folks. So you have panels, you have Facebook. Tell us about sort of the scope of how you measure and what that audience looks like, the way that you actually sample or create your ratings.
So that's a pretty big question. I'll start on a couple of points. So Nielsen believes in true third-party independent measurement. And so at the core of all of that is the highest quality panels out there in the marketplace. And so a lot of our work right now is about making sure we have the largest, most representative panels in the market and to cover all the screens, regardless of how people are consuming. And so that's one part, and we're continuing to invest in that this year, and I think you may have also heard some of the announcements around that. Third-party data, or big data, in our methodologies and in our products are an important ingredient which we're adding in. And so those sources are like Facebook, but also Experian and others that we've struck deals with. And the object of using those additional data sets is to enrich where panels don't do enough or where they don't get deep enough. And wherever we've mentioned the term kind of census methodology, this is where we're combining that third-party data in with our panels to create a more kind of granular and a more accurate measure for things which are just harder to measure because they're smaller or they're more subtle or they're just growing. They're new effects which are just growing in the marketplace.
So let's talk a little bit about connected TVs as a particular screen and Roku and other, I know that you guys are working with Hulu, you're working with other publishers, you're working with platforms. What are the opportunities and some of the challenges, and what is the roadmap around measurement around OTT devices?
So I think first off, we're thrilled about our alliance that we struck with Roku. So Roku is one of the first platforms to be measured using our digital ad ratings, formerly known as OCR service, and it's a really exciting alliance that we struck with them. But a little bit about over the top. Over the top is really a really challenging space, and a year or two ago, people were saying, "Oh, mobile is a really challenging space," but in comparison, over the top is even worse. You've got 12 different devices and platforms, all of which use different operating systems, all of which have no standards about how they put advertising out there or how they put content out there. And on top of that, the services that are getting put on these platforms are growing so quickly that every month there's something new that you have to measure. So it's a really challenging space. I think that's where I'll start. The approach that we're taking, though, is to trying to work with those platforms to enable measurement. And Roku is just an example. We're working with the device makers and the platforms across the market. But the way we're trying to go about it is to build measurement capabilities right into those platforms. And so Roku is a great example because we've built measurement into the OS, like right into the device, so that publishers that put their content or their ads onto Roku can get measurement using the standard set of tools which Roku offers them. So it's a challenging space, but we think we have a great strategy in how we're going to go about tackling all the different devices and platforms out there.
And mobile, you've been there for a while. Tell us where mobile is in terms of measurement.
So I feel like this is a year where we've really checked the boxes on mobile. We have our SDKs and our platform integrations out in the marketplace. And we've got great adoption. So I think digital ad ratings, which it's close, near and dear to my heart, we've had explosive growth where now a significant proportion of our advertising we measure is mobile, and we have coverage of virtually every publisher out there now.
That's great. And give us a little bit of a global view on things and how sort of the cross-screen is developing or rolling out globally.
So I think there's two parts to it. That total audience strategy, which I talked to you about earlier, we're taking that philosophy to every market. So every new market that we're looking at, even old markets we've been in for a long time, we're also bringing this philosophy to. And so all the new capabilities, products, features that we're building into those markets are going to follow that approach. I think the second thing is that this year in particular, we've made great strides in launching our digital ad ratings products globally. We're launching into 7 additional markets this year, and by the end of, actually into 2016, we should have 16 markets launched, which will have about 95% coverage of all ad spending globally. So we're hitting all the most important, biggest markets with digital ad ratings. And so that's super exciting for us because it is sorely needed. Digital measurement is has been growing up in the U.S., but it's barely off the ground in a lot of markets around the world.
And how do you see the value or the future value of the GRP?
So this is always a funny question because the GRP is just a metric, and our services offer a lot more than just GRPs. I think at the core, though, the question about how important is knowing who the people are that you're reaching, and then how many, is always going to be relevant. You might want to ask additional questions, and that's what Nielsen will always do. We'll always answer all the questions that are relevant to our clients. But there is an importance to know the basics. You can't just skip over the basics and ignore how many people or how many or what are the demographics or characteristics of those people, because that is important. It is important to know how many people you reached. Otherwise, all the additional questions you ask aren't really relevant, because if you hit one person, why ask all those other questions?
Getting to sort of the one-on-one addressable world that's sort of emerging. We talked a lot about that in Cannes recently, and we see it particularly with satellite companies, with DirecTV and Dish and Cablevision now, and directing to ads to specific households. What's the role of Nielsen in addressable one-to-one TV?
Well, I think there's still a very important role for us. It's actually a very comparable role as what we do in digital today. So as advertising shifts to a more addressable format, there'll still be a need to validate whether or not you hit the people, you exposed the people in the households to the advertising that you expected. And it's important for you to provide metrics on how well your campaigns are doing, how they're delivering. And so it's a different way of providing those metrics, but it's just as important, because even though a set-top box, for example, gives that kind of individual household information, you still need to know who was actually watching the TV. Was it just the head of the household? Were all the kids there? Was anyone even in front of the TV? And those are the types of questions which you can't answer using the machine data alone. So I think there's a very important role for Nielsen to play, especially as the amount of information and the number of permutations and choices that get created explode. We will play an even more important role to help to find the most efficient way, to find the best way to be able to sift through all those choices and to make the best investment choices with these emerging platforms.
And finally, David, you're not necessarily in touch directly with clients, but I'm sure you're aware of their needs as products develop. What are the demands of clients, and how does that affecting future product development at Nielsen?
So, I spend a lot of time with clients, so I might not be the ones doing all of the pitching, but I spend a lot of time talking to clients to understand what their needs are. So, it's such a long list, but I would start with coverage. So that total audience strategy is really important for our clients, to make sure that there is coverage of all the ways that our clients are distributing media and the way that they're distributing advertising. I think the other thing that a lot of our clients are asking for is comparability. People want to break down the silos. They want to make sure that our data is not just digital data and TV data, but that it's video data and that it's text data and it's audio or music data that cross those lines more efficiently. So I think that's another thing that people are asking for. And then of course, people are wanting to get easier access to our information. So we're taking a very close look at how we make our data available to our clients. We do admittedly have a lot of old systems, and we're trying to turn them over and to make sure we have better ways of making that data available. And I think that's a really important thing, actually, especially as the pace of business increases and the real-time demands of our clients increases.